So we sit here with markets really taking a leg downwards this morning. No surprise given what we'd seen in the limited Asian session, I suppose. Does this look, I mean, we're looking at two things. We're looking at the actual virus itself, and then regardless of the facts there, we're looking at the Chinese government's response. Yep. And I suppose if you put those two things together, does this look like a sensible sell-off?
Yeah, I think so. It always surprises me, or always has surprised me, at least in recent years, how easily and quickly risk markets have been able to shrug off things which do ostensibly look like they should require a discount in terms of pricing. It sort of looked like that was going to be the playbook. I think probably the Chinese New Year is having an impact here, not just because we know that normally it's a period of sort of economic volatility, but we would expect to be economic strength, but also because we're not getting necessarily the feedback from Chinese risk markets, so it's difficult to know how investors on the ground are feeling about things. So without that extra information, I think markets have erred on the side of caution and sold off a bit. And as you describe, in terms of potential economic impacts, that definitely does seem to make sense.
Yeah, can't you already sort of make a call here, James, as you see something like maybe 1 billion trips canceled inside of China, and what is likely to be a big drop, at least in the short term, in tourism? You're not going to see the bookings on flights. You're not going to see the hotel bookings. You're not going to see restaurant bookings. I mean, it's going to be a drop for commodities. It seems like this could have, if it's 1 week or two, huge economic impacts.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, just the information that we know so far in terms of people's restrictions on travel, firms operating in specific regions, desire to shut down production or to close off their offices to try and discourage people from travelling, absolutely that's likely to have an impact. I thought it was interesting to observe Netflix's performance at the back end of last week. There seemed to be some narrative emerging that people wouldn't travel, but maybe they would stay home and order, binge watch box sets on Netflix. And I think it's important when you're trying to do the economic analysis to recognise that maybe there is some substitution. We've known about things like, for example, Domino's Pizza being a sort of defensive investment in terms of economic weakness, because it's not that people stop consuming takeaway during a period where they don't feel as wealthy, but actually takeaways takes the place of going and eating out in sort of more expensive, shall we say, circumstances. So there are some offsets potentially, but the sheer magnitude of the disruption, I think it would be folly not to expect that to play out in the economic data.
Yeah, and James, when you start to look at the sectors, you see some reaction that you would expect, I suppose, including oil and gas under pressure. This is a chart that goes back to 2003 and shows us the commodity index, the Bloomberg Commodity Index, and that took a hit during the early stage of the SARS outbreak, but then, of course, was unwound afterwards. This is sort of typical, the way that we would expect, I guess, commodity markets to react in this situation.
Yeah, exactly. I think the comparison with the SARS outbreak is mostly a good framework to begin with, but I think, where you are in the economic cycle and where you are relative to policy levers that have or haven't already been pulled, and where you are in terms of business and consumer confidence will have an impact as well. And in that, when you start to overlay that type of analysis, I think there's the potential for this, were the outbreak to be something similar to SARS in terms of magnitude and significance, shall we say. This has the potential to be a bit more disruptive and destabilising, because we're just at that much more, concerning, shall we say, or inflection-y point of the cycle.